Hey, what's going on, everyone? Sorry for running a little late today. Okay, so hope everyone has had a good week. I'm going to be interviewing actually one of my former remote coaching clients, an IT professional. So we'll just wait for him to jump in, and then um, just like all my lives, I mean, they're very casual. I try to give out thousands of dollars of free information. Whether people take action on it is a different story. But hope everyone has had a good week. And you guys have like a really relaxing weekend planned as well. So I'll just wait for him to jump in a little bit. I have my um, morning organic coffee today. Again, I drink coffee like fairly rarely. It's actually mostly organic green tea, like sencha green tea or jasmine green tea, sometimes gunpowder green tea as well. But I do enjoy drinking coffee from time to time. But I think it's more of like a morning ritual type of thing than anything else. So, ooh, that is hot, but tastes amazing. So let's see. All right. Ellie, let me know if I pronounced your name right. Martinez, sorry if I got it wrong. Pronouncing people's names is definitely not my strength. Okay, let me go check on Igor, okay, guys? Give me 1 second. So, okay, cool. Okay, so we'll just wait a little bit, no rush. He's trying to jump in here and then we'll begin thereafter. Hey,
Hey, Eugene.
IT professional of the year. Good to see you again, man.
Thank you.
Yeah, believe it or not, it's probably been already like, I don't know, 7 or 8 months since we had our actual like video call together.
Gosh, I think so. It was like October. Yes.
Was it October? Like it was probably way longer than that because I'm talking about like video call, actually seeing you. I know
Oh,
we did
yes.
the weekly
The
calls for
last one
sure.
was in
Yeah,
August. Yes.
okay, okay. Yeah, for some reason I thought it was even further back than that. I thought maybe it was like June or something like that. Because I know we did the initial consult call, which was a phone call, but then we did the mechanical assessment, which was a video call. But then we did the program overview, which was another video call. But then after that, it was just all phone calls, and now I'm seeing you again. But but good to see you. Good to see you again.
Thank you.
Yeah, and Igor, so these calls are all about you getting to know your story a little bit better. I'm just going to do kind of like a quick introduction here. For people that are interested, I know it's like a New Year's resolution time as well, and for a lot of people, their health is a priority. So sometimes with especially the symptom management model of healthcare in America, a lot of times people oftentimes maybe aren't conscious that they can kind of improve their health without the need of various medical drugs and be on 10 or 20 different medical drugs and to down like a half a bottle of like antidepressants in the morning just to be able to go to work every day. So there's another life out there. Igor is a perfect example. So here's some before and after blood work that was able to be achieved in just a fairly short period too. So 6 months. Uh, so we took his total cholesterol from 212 down to 165. His triglyceride levels went from um, a very dangerous level of 393, and it went down to 122 within 6 months. HDL went from 36 to 45. The increase was actually a good thing in that case. And non-HDL went from 176, which is high, to 120. And his body fat went from about 25% to about 10 or 12%. And this was done with a busy IT schedule and just doing workouts at home with just a pair of adjustable dumbbells. I think we had the power block dumbbells with you and a door pull-up bar. So you guys, you don't need like a fancy gym. And to have these numbers, if you were to go the medical route, from my observation, you probably need like a couple of different medical drugs to get these numbers to even out. And all of those medical drugs would have side effects themselves. So you'd need more medical drugs to counter the side effects of those medical drugs, and then more. Anyway, it's a great business model for some people for sure, but not like great healthcare for others. So if you are interested in going on an honest journey, I invited Igor today just to give actually what's worked for him. Everyone is different, but this is just a perfect example that it doesn't take like 50 years to regain your health. And B, you don't need like um, a gym built on Mars City out of the highest tech of technologies, et cetera, et cetera. Once you kind of start living like a human being, it becomes like pretty easy. So Igor, you're welcome to take over and maybe give a little bit of your backstory and your health history and stuff like that, and we can kind of just go in any direction.
Sure. So again, I think we met through a Facebook group, like a camping one. And I saw you kind of went through India and some other places, and we started chatting. That's when I got to know that you do a lot of coaching. And I was like, wow, this is really cool. That was about, I think, September of 2023. Then in November, I think, yeah, it was November, I went to the doctor just to do my regular checkup, and that's when those numbers came up. And my primary doctor said, "Oh, I need to put you on allopurinol to lower my uric acid. You need to go on cholesterol medication as well." And there was something else that I can't remember. And I kind of told her, I said, "Hi, I don't think I need this, right? I think that's not going to do anything if I don't change my lifestyle because I was eating a lot of junk food. It's easy, it's comfortable, it's quick, right? You kind of, coming out of the COVID era, you kind of get used to that, right? Delivery food and all those things. So you and I started to chat, and around November, right? I think is when I did my first assessment with you. And I said, hey, went to the doctor, here's what's happening, right? I kind of challenged my doctor because I don't think that's going to resolve the problem. It's just going to, mask the symptoms. So you and I, started chat, we did the assessment, and we went on that journey, which was really good because like December, I was really overweight. And, when your wardrobe doesn't fit anymore, you kind of got a problem. Um, Also, I had, kind of low energy, right? Especially working in IT, you spend many hours in front of a screen and you see, I was at that point, right? I was sitting the whole day. After chatting with you, right, we started the program and I also bought a stand-up desk. I love your, lessons on mobility, posture, keep moving and all that good stuff. Then think we started talking about a challenge, right? Because I was progressing really well. Um, and you suggested that, hey, do you want to hike Kilimanjaro? And I said, yeah, that actually is on my bucket list, right? Go to Tanzania. Um, Around that time is when you started, training me for that. And came around September of last year, I did go to Kilimanjaro and I completed the 8-day trekking to the Uhuru Peak, which was a incredible experience. So thanks for suggesting that. That was a little bit of a, icing on the cake, right? Like journey back to health. So that's a little bit of my story with Eugene, right? Eugene.
Yeah, we can go in any direction. I mean, honestly, I wanted to talk to you about your actual experience in Kilimanjaro because eventually, like, I want to do it too. And I know you were trying to talk me into it, but I'm like, nah, man, this is your journey. I can train you for it, but I'm comfortable with my gym workouts and just kind of going for a local hike around my park here, for 10 minute circles, circles every day. But yeah, I'm just interested in hearing how was that trip? Can you kind of give a good rundown of
Oh,
like,
yeah.
where you booked it and your first day all the way to your last day?
So you actually suggested a company, right? Climbing Kilimanjaro. You said they were good. I started contacting them, super responsive. They were amazing. The way they organize their hikes, right? There's different routes. So, pick one that you think will be good. I personally recommend the Lemosha route. It's a 8-day trekking, 6 days, to get to the peak and 2 days down. Really good time to get acclimated. The other thing is I like smaller groups. So there was only 10 people in our group, which is good, right? Less people, more focus. After talking to them, explaining what I would like to see during the hike and everything, they suggested two different routes. I ended up picking Lemosho. I also recommend either you go in the dry season or the shoulder season. In my case, I went on the shoulder season because as you might imagine, although you're in Africa, when you get up high, you're going to see a lot of snow. There are glaciers up there, and you don't want to be, you know, rainy season there. Although I learned later that German people like to get challenged and they always go in the rainy season.
Mm,
Not for me. We got really good weather. Then you fly, there's no direct flight from the US. So you'd be looking, probably JFK to Nairobi in Kenya. And then there's a short 1 hour flight to Arusha, which is the main hub town for Kilimanjaro. They will pick you up in the airport. They introduce you to everything. The next morning, you have a debriefing with your group. They do a whole gear check, and they send you all the list and everything before. Weight is kind of a concern there because they will weight all the packs that the porters will be carrying for you. So basically, you have your backpack with your water, your snacks for the day, rain pants, right, raincoat because the weather over there changes all the time. But the porters will carry, most of the heavy equipment. For a group of 10 people, we had 37 porters, 5 guides, and 2 chefs that would cook. So you don't have to assemble and disassemble your tent. The crew will do all that for you. All you have to do is, every day when you camp in a different area, they will ask you to pack your sleeping bag and all those things. I end up renting all my gear there for sleeping bags and things like that. I was like, I don't think I'm gonna, carry that, especially because they ask, for I think it was 10 Fahrenheit, the rating. The last day before the ascent, when you get to base camp, it's really cold up there. So, my sleeping bag is not that good. I was like, I'm just going to rent everything in there. So I end up renting all the, sleeping bag, the pillow, all the kind of stuff in there. The tent and other things, they provide everything. So you start down on the west side of Kilimanjaro. It's called the Lemosho Gate. It's really beautiful. It's like a jungle. It's a forest. Virginia, we remember, for the rest of my life, when we were driving there was giraffes, like wild
mhm.
giraffes running around. There was elephants. There was, monkeys. And we were like, oh my gosh, like, this is the real deal. So you get to the gate and then, you don't hike that much every day. It's about like 5 to 8 miles. Well, for me, it's not a whole lot, right? Because I like to hike a lot. But the main thing that you learn there with the guides is that slow and steady. They say poly is what they always tell you. You go really slow, getting acclimated. Um, Something that was interesting, you don't go like straight to the peak. You really go around the park to get used to. So a technique that they use a lot, to increase your chances of success is you hike high. So, we would take a route and would go high elevation, and then we go down and camp in a lower elevation.
Mm,
Um, yeah, so it's really cool. And every morning, it's a little bit like military. I thought it was really cool, super organized. We wake up, coffee's ready, we get our coffee, we get breakfast, we go and pack everything right out of the tent. The potters disassemble everything. We start our hike, and in the meantime, the porters and the rest of the crew, they're super fast. And by the time you get to the next campground, everything is ready to go, right? Course, you have to go pick up your backpack and unpack your sleeping bag and things like that. They provide all the meals. They're all tailored, to increase your chance of success. So the first days, it's pretty normal, like rice, meat, vegetables, right? Lots of carbs. You're gonna eat a lot. Oh my
mhm.
goodness. Some days we're like, I don't think I can eat anymore. But they're like, hey, you're gonna need it, right? As you go up in the mountain, it becomes more soups because it changes how you digest your food. At least that's what they explained to us. Um, on the night of the ascent, it's the kind of like hardest night, right? You get to base camp, which is really high. It's very cold there, very packed too, because all the different routes, they converge into the base camp. You start your hike to the top at 11 p.m. on the same day. So, it's a short hike to the base camp. They feed you. You take a very long nap. They want you to be well rested, but, you hike up there during the night because the sun, it's insane up there, as you might imagine, at that altitude. The night of the hike, it was minus 30 Fahrenheit. It
Mm.
was very cold. We were like in full like ski gear, as you might imagine. And again, they put everything on the packing list. But I will never forget that experience neither because it was a full moon, right? One of the super moons. And when you're that up high, right, you're above the clouds every day. The clouds are way below you. You had this crazy night sky. Even though it was super moon, we still could see the stars in the sky. It was like incredible. It takes about 6 to 7 hours to reach the Uhuru Peak, the top of Kilimanjaro. And we made it in 6 hours and a half, which was really good. And everyone in our, team did. But once you get up there, you're gonna take your pictures, and the crew is gonna, get you down because the elevation is not supposed to be there, if that makes sense.
Hmm.
And then the way down is pretty straightforward. You cross like a lot of different biomes. I'm kind of a nerd, so I really love that. You start in the jungle, then you go into this pine tree region, then he gets like to the alpine region, and then gets to the moorlands, just grass, and all of a sudden, it's snow and ice. Being in the top of, the roof of Africa, is like they like to call it, and seeing those glaciers up there was really incredible. So that was, an amazing experience. But like I mentioned, the crew is really, really good. They will take your oxygen levels twice a day, every day. They check your pressure, everything, right? The main thing that you're trying to do is, fight the altitude sickness, because if your oxygen levels go down, that's it. The trip is over for you. Luckily, in our group, right, everyone made it. But that day of the ascent, I heard from the rangers, right, in the park, that there was 21 helicopter rescues. So
Mm.
things got a little more serious on the last day. But like I mentioned, everything was really good with our team. I think your training was really good. All those squats and lunges and reverse lunges, step ups. Because yeah, you're gonna be putting a lot of strength. There are areas that is pretty flat and it's easy, but there are some areas that you're kind of like against the wall in the rock, and there's a lot of like stepping up all the
Hmm.
time. The day of the ascent is definitely the hardest one because the incline, and it's all switchbacks until you get to the top. So those exercises, very good.
Yeah. I'm sure just losing 40 pounds was the biggest advantage, not
Yeah.
having to carry that much weight with like every single step. I always found with mountain climbing, even like 5 or 10 pounds in any one direction can make such a huge difference um, with your endurance and stamina. And that's funny that you mentioned about the cold. It's like one time when I climbed Mount Fury with my friend Megan Valentine, I did a podcast with her a while back. I didn't buy gloves, and I'm like, it's
Oh,
fine. I'll
wow.
just put I'll just put like my hands in my jacket and it'll be totally fine. It's like biggest mistake ever. So you brought at one point it's like I couldn't even like squeeze my hands together, when your hands were like just so you brought up that example of like not having an adequate sleeping bag, and then just being the smarter person and just getting an adequate versus
Yeah.
me, I was like, oh no, I'm gonna save $20 and then just have like a miserable 5 day trip because I can't even flex my hands.
It
So lesson
was so
learned.
cold, right? Like I mentioned, minus 30 up there. The night of the ascent, they tell you, hey, when you drink your water, right, to the water bladder, make sure you blow it back, otherwise we'll freeze. Even though
Yeah.
we all did that, our water is still froze inside the backpacks. It's that
Yeah.
cold. But once the sun rises, which again, if you love nature and landscapes, the sun rising, because again, you're above the clouds, so the whole sky turns like fiery orange. Once the sun came out, it was like good, right? Everything melted and we're fine. But man, the night of the ascent, that is the rough night.
Yeah, and it's at the top of the peak. I think for the listeners, like Kilimanjaro is like the highest peak in Africa. I don't know where it ranks in terms of all the other peaks. I think it's like the third or maybe the fourth highest peak in the world, or
I
no?
think the third or the fourth. It's the tallest freestanding mountain, right? It's not part like of a mountain range. Yeah, and I think like the elevation is 19,400 something. Yeah, it's really up there.
Yeah. And I also find like the top, like for some reason, that sign that they have at the top, the popular one, that everyone takes a picture of, it's kind of like a beat up sign, but it like for some reason looks so cool to take a picture of. You know what I mean? It's like you could probably drive past like a million of those type of signs like on the freeway and not even look twice at
Right.
it. But for some reason, it's very iconic up there, you know?
That one is the iconic one. And they always tell us this story that, there's like two kind of main areas there. There's a Stella Point, because the first person that hiked to the top got that far, and then he got altitude sickness and had to go down. But his wife, decided to go down with him. So he named that point Stella Point.
Hmm.
They tried to go back, and once again he got altitude sickness. But he told his wife, "No, you go when you finish," and she's the one that finished. He couldn't
Mm.
make it. It was kind of cool too, because every night you go in the tent and they tell you a lot of the story of the region and how everything got started. There's a lot of like cultural moments there. Another thing that I thought your program was really good, Eugene. It's not just the physical challenge, but it's also like the mental challenge, right? You're going to go 8 days, right? Showers, it's not a thing. They give you a little bucket of water and you kind of wash your, main parts, right? There's no cell phone coverage. You're literally cut off of the outside world. There's no communications. So again, going through your program, right? We talk about the schedule, peace of mind, all those techniques that you teach throughout your course. I thought that was really, really important because as we get to the campgrounds, we'll be talking to other groups and so forth. Some people literally, get to the fourth day and they're like, this is too much. I can't do this. And they really turn around and go back.
In the Russian military, they just execute you at that point. Yeah. Yeah, but I always found with fitness goals, like being on a fitness or health journey, it was always a lot more interesting for me personally, having it be like a mental game and learning about, like what would you have to change in yourself to be like more disciplined, to have like a better conversation with yourself internally? Like how would you change your environment around to kind of facilitate your health goals a lot better? That always fascinated me a lot more than just like, am I going to get more muscular or is my blood work going to get better or whatever, or et cetera, et cetera. That stuff is like, okay. But the real interest, like for me personally, was like, oh, what character changes would I have to do to achieve like X, Y, Z on a consistent basis? And the psychology behind the fitness and wellness is actually
And
like
I
what
think you,
interested me the
you
most.
just
Yeah.
said the word, right? Consistent. As I was going through my hike, I could hear your voice, like, be consistent, be consistent. Because, a lot of people talk, oh, I need motivation, right? When motivation is not there, consistent, like you and I talked a lot about that. It's what carries you through, right? I'm
Mhm.
not feeling motivated today, but I'm still going to do the right things because motivation comes and goes.
Yeah, I always say, and I got this from Stefan Walensky, is kind of like the mind is always changing its mind, Like today, you don't like your job. Tomorrow, you do like your job. The third day, you're indifferent to it. And a lot of people that are inconsistent are too overly identified with like the content of their mind. And then, of course, they're just drifting with the wind. Today, the wind blows this way, they go that way. Tomorrow, the wind is blowing whichever other way, they're going to go that way. And unfortunately, with like, especially with mental and physical health goals, and kind of like almost anything in life, it deteriorates quite quickly without use or attention. So unless you have like very consistent like systems in place, um, or you're striving to develop those systems and get those systems in place, I would argue, especially with the context of this video, especially with like fat loss journeys, it's like almost impossible. I feel like just a waste of time to start a fat loss journey unless you're also in the mindset of like, how could I re-engineer like my external and internal environment to make sure I could do this consistently all the time, year after year after year. And it doesn't mean you need to work out like 2 hours, 3 hours a day, six
Right.
days a week. Like we only had you working out like 45 to 60 minutes a day, like four
That
or
was
five
it.
days a week, with just adjustable dumbbells at home. So it's not like you guys need anything like super elaborate. But just understand there's simple principles and a lot of things with health and wellness, like a 10-year-old child can understand. But knowing it at an intellectual level does nothing. It's actually being able to apply it consistently, especially in a world that doesn't really facilitate like mental or physical health that well, especially with Western cultures being typically pretty fast pace, depending on your occupation and stuff of that sort, but generally very fast pace. And it's kind of one of those cultures where it's like if you're not dying for your job, you're not doing your job, or you're worthless, or have no identity, or something of that sort.
I think, one of the like turning points for me throughout the journey was when we discussed the lesson on the schedule, right? Having the set schedule is really important. I'm going to go to bed at this time. I'm going to get up at this time. The first thing I do is this and this, because that brings that consistency, right? Again, I
Hmm.
really like your program because of the whole building blocks until you get to that point, right?
Hmm.
Like you said, it's not like just, oh, I feel motivated today. No, here's my schedule. I'm just going to follow through, right? It's the follow
Yeah.
through that's really important.
Yeah, just being procedural. And the whole definition of procedural is it needs to be done every time. It's not
Yeah,
procedural unless it's not done every time. So it's pretty simple. That's why I think just people kind of like, again, they're overly identify with the contents of their mind, and like however they feel that day, they'll just go with that. But little do they understand, it's like the mind is constantly changing its mind. So you can't rely upon it ever. You could listen to it and observe it, but definitely overly identifying with it and just going in that direction is going to produce like very, very inconsistent results. And then also just not being clear on your goals, not having objective ways of measuring those goals, not being clear on what needs to actually be done to achieve those goals. A lot of people also, they try to solve problems with the same belief systems that lead to the problems, and then wondering why the problems never disappear. I'm like, dude, you can't be the source of the problem and then try to solve the problem.
definitely. Like, I think the lack of sleep in my case associated, with again the easy food, right? Ordering food all the time. It was two big problems. Before, I went to the doctor. As you know, we were looking to move from Minnesota to the West Coast. We came here and we did a hike. I think it was like Trillium Lake. And I remember that I was so out of shape that it was an easy hike, but I had to stop 4 times in the period of like 2, 3 hours. And I was like, oh no, this is bad. And that was like I think September last year, the 2023. Yeah, thinking that oh wow, I actually climbed Kilimanjaro 1 year later. It's like you said, right? It doesn't take 20 years to
Yeah.
make the change.
Yeah, and again, with the blood work results that I listed in the beginning, that happened, I think, at like even the like maybe 4 or 5 month mark. I remember you had that blood work done, not even towards the end
Yeah,
of the
it
program.
was 5 months
So
in.
yeah,
Yeah,
so the 5 month mark, I mean, especially the most troubling, I think, in your blood work were the triglyceride levels, right? Which are at 393, and in 5 months you're able to bring it down to 122 without the use of like any medical drugs or anything of that sort. And in my opinion, just doing the most absolute basic of health and fitness stuff. And that's it. And unfortunately, just a lot of times doctors will see these numbers and they'll put a person on like 3 or 4 medical drugs right away without even addressing that, like, hey, you could easily solve this for pretty much for free and actually save money by adopting a health conscious lifestyle, which is way cheaper than an unhealth conscious lifestyle. And you could also do it in just a few. You could also do it in just a few short months as well.
yeah, yeah. I think another benefit is like you said. There's this myth that organic's expensive. Since we did the program, right? I buy everything organic now and prepare my chicken. I love I love all the again different techniques that you kind of teach throughout your course. The kind of again the building blocks to be successful with the program. But one thing that we notice is the savings on just like food. It's a lot. It's very expensive to go out to eat or order food in, and
Yeah.
I think something that you always talk a lot about it is the nutrition, right? There's no nutrition in a lot of those foods that we were eating before versus now that, and it's kind of fun, I took a little bit of a break right during the holidays, and hey, we bought some cheese, some bread, all that good stuff, right, Eugene? And I was like, wow, what a
I thought
difference, right?
I
That
felt a disturbance in the force. Now I know who it is.
on that 2 period week, I started feeling like I needed to snack again, right? And then, after the first of the year, you go back, eating your vegetables, making sure you're getting your fiber, again, all the things that you teach on the course. And I was like, I haven't felt like snacking now for 2 weeks again. It's like 1 week they start, just eating those, cheese, nuts, bread all the time. You just feel like snacking all the time.
Yeah, and I hear that often all the time, like, oh, organic is too expensive or this and that. I'm
No.
like, dude, it is not too expensive. Like the average American spends 8 to 16,000 a year. Let's just say 12,500 average it out between the two, $12,500 a year on non-essential expenses, which mostly includes just like eating out and alcohol and like subscription services and stuff of this sort. And they do that without even questioning it for 1 second. And all those non-essential expenses literally add no quality to the person's life. And in fact, most often just contribute to their obesity, misery, and disease in one way or another. They complain about their weight, but yet they're eating the food that's causing their weight or bad skin or digestive issues or whatever. And, for a 2,000 calorie organic diet, it's about like $12.70 a day. And I think that averages out to about like 5,000 a year or something like that, some kind of number of that sort. And an obese person will tell you that's way too expensive, but yet you look at their books and they're spending like 12,500 on eating out and processed food. I'm like, dude, what are you talking about too expensive? You're spending already twice the amount of what it would cost to eat an organic diet on keeping yourself obese, on keeping yourself addicted to medical drugs. And I do call it like medical drug addiction because inevitably uh, there's a lot of maladaptive behavior that forms that leads to a person becoming like obese and having very bad metabolic or hormonal health or mental health, et cetera, et cetera. And then instead of, you know, changing the person that's causing the disease, they, mask the symptom with taking like various dangerous medical drugs. And a lot of them, the funny thing is I forgot exactly where I saw this, but on YouTube, one person listed a food group, but he listed the side effects from a medical drug. And he asked people, would you eat this food if it caused these issues? And they're like, no, I wouldn't touch that food. And he's like, oh, actually, this is the medication you're taking right now. And they're like, oh, no, it was
And I
just
think
so
that,
funny.
and I think, yeah, I think the healthcare system here, it's definitely broken, right? Like, look at me, my example. I went to do my checkup, had high cholesterol, uh, um, uric acid, and the triglycerides. Instead of my doctor having a conversation with me, the first thing, here's 3 medications that you're going to be taking. And I was like, this is not healthcare. It's
Mhm.
not going to change anything, right? So I think the country has a long way to go as far as, getting people to be healthy. Because putting yourself on 3 different medications, I'm 44 now, um, that's not health.
Hi everyone, thanks for tuning into the podcast. I'm curious, have you ever been confused by the labels in the grocery store? In Yevgeny's book, he demystifies the difference between caged, cage-free, free-range, and pasture-raised meats. He also covers how to avoid GMOs, source high-quality water, fish, supplements, and other related topics. It's a beautifully illustrated, non-technical read that comes with a comprehensive video series and other extended learning materials. Jump on Amazon and check out the book titled Anti-Factory Farm Shopping Guide by Eugene Trufkin. Now let's dive back into the podcast.
Yeah, and that messes up because the medications are so concentrated. It messes up your system completely in the long run. And then good luck sorting out like what's causing what eventually. Um, and
And
yeah, I mean a lot of
oh, sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you. But the funny thing is, when I went back to my doctor, right, my primary doctor, and ran all the tests, and you remember you even ordered some other tests that my primary doctor didn't even know what they were. She had to look it up.
Mhm.
She's a doctor. Anyways, she was like, "Oh, wow, your numbers look really good. What did you do?" And I was like, "Well, I got into a training program. There's, I think, like it's not just the physical, like the nutrition and the activity, right? You also work a lot on the mental piece, or with the schedule and the triggers. What triggers you to eat, right? Like you need to avoid those things and make real changes, right? Having those tough conversations." And then I actually told her, and I said, I wish healthcare here looked like this.
Mhm.
This is health for me. What do you recommend it? That didn't sound like the path I wanted to take. Being three different medications at 43 years old. And she's like, yeah, you're right. We should have the conversations. But, she's like, a lot of times, people don't want to make those changes, right? You can't force them. So I don't know what the answer is, Eugene.
No, they do want to make it. It's just they don't have a clear vision. Because what we did is set up a clear vision from start to finish.
Right.
Like, this is what we're going to do every week. We have these weekly goals, we have these monthly goals, and it's a streamlined process. They need just like in IT, you need a streamlined problem solution process, of this is what's going to happen and how we're going to solve the issue. And then when people see the vision, they do it, you know? It's very rare. Maybe 1 out of every 20 people that does the program doesn't follow through with it, but that's like a very low failure rate in my opinion, And I think just unfortunately, it's like a lot of healthcare professionals are sick themselves, so they can't find a solution for their own health problems. How are they going to do that? How are they going to help you find a solution for your health problems? And then on top of that, it's like the sick care system. It's not even the healthcare system. What they're trying to do is like, for example, you're you're in a swamp and it's causing all sorts of disease. So instead of just using common sense and stepping out of the swamp and letting your body heal naturally, they're like, no, let's just stay here, but figure out a way to tinker and adjust to survive within the swamp, which is kind of normalized pathology that's in society today. And that's it. That's the healthcare model. But in my opinion, it's like, dude, like, just step out of the swamp. Take 3 steps to the left. Stop struggling in that environment. And that's it. I'm like, come on, man. Like, it's like idiocy 101. To a certain degree, it does make more money because inevitably the patient never gets better. Like, they're going to put you on these 3 drugs today, but the problem is the belief system that led to those 3 problems initially, or whatever, the high triglycerides, LDL, etc. If not changed, it's going to lead to a myriad of other problems later on. Maybe not tomorrow, not a year later, but for sure, like 5 or 10 years later, it's going to accumulate and stuff of that sort. So inevitably, you just need to change the person that's causing the disease, and the disease goes away. So oftentimes, like with you, we didn't even concentrate on any of these symptoms. We didn't even talk about it, like, oh, let's bring our triglycerides down and get these numbers to even out. I'm like, no, man, we're just going to focus on living like a human being again.
You
And then all of
just
these
say that a lot.
numbers,
Yep.
yeah, all these numbers will even out. And sure enough, they always even out. In 20 years of coaching people, I've never seen it not even out. Even people that claim like, oh, it's all genetics. I'm like, no, the only thing you got from your parents is a bad belief system that you are now probably passing down, unfortunately, to your kids too.
No, it's so true. And it's one of those things, right? Having gone through your program, I don't think I could ever like go back to what I was doing before, just because, now that wow, I feel good, right? I remember, probably like 3 months into your program, I went to get a haircut, and, the gal that cuts my hair, she was like, oh my God, your hair is so thick and like shiny. What are you doing? And she's like, your skin is glowing. And I was like, well, my trainer said I started living like a human
Yeah.
being.
Yeah. I mean, it sounds like kind of almost too simple to work, but just give it a try. There are people without, uh, 99.5% of human existence was just hunter-gatherers without even an education in nutrition or health. And somehow they remain like super healthy. And I know people are going to say, oh, they died young. Actually, that's not true. If you take out child mortality out of the equation, they died in quite old age, like 60 or 70 years old, which is 73 years old is the average lifespan of an American these days. That's like has supposedly, quote unquote, the best healthcare in the world. I would just argue the most expensive healthcare in the world, not the best healthcare in the world. Most expensive for sure. Um, but they're not living any longer than the guy with like literally zero healthcare, no 401k, no anything, no family physician available, uh, and uh, they're not living any longer than that person. And I would argue living a far lower quality of life too, because the average American probably like their spirit dies at like 35, but their body continues into like 73, all medically drugged out to the max. and somehow they're like, oh yeah, I'm healthy. I'm like, no, man, you've just normalized pathology, and that's all that's happening.
And I think there's also, like there's, not having enough information and having too much information available. Something that I really enjoyed working with you, right? I'll never forget our little tab on the spreadsheet, and I still tweak that once in a while. Hey, here's the groups of foods that I want you to focus, right? And you're gonna, tweak them around. And when you hit your calories, right? Your veggies, they're freebie. You can eat as much as you want of these veggies, right? I think, like the approach that you had to simplify that, it's easy to implement because,
Hmm.
I think a person that's just starting their journey on their own, it can be really overwhelming, right? With all the types of different information, some good information out there, and some are just, do keto, do this, right? Like the, trendy things out there. And I think sometimes, that overload of
Yeah.
information can cause a little bit of paralysis for them to take that first step. Like, oh no, this is too much, it's too complicated. I don't have time. I hear that so much, Eugene, where I don't have time. And I was like, but you still have time to go online, make an account on this, DoorDash thing and hook up your credit card, go through the menu, order the food. And you know what I mean? Like it's that those trade-offs of like, and you always talk a lot about that, like what's really important, to you, right? Because the time, no, again, I love your chart with time commitment,
Hmm.
because it really puts things into perspective, right? It takes the same amount of time. I'm just investing my time poorly. And you know me, that I'm very logical, and when things start to make sense to me, it's a lot easier for me to follow through.
Yeah, I mean, a few things I hate when I hear people say I don't have time either. It's like, oh man, just like please, like stop being retarded. Yeah, when I forgot the exact timetables, but like for example, even if a person is working 50 hours a week, sleeping 8 hours a day, hanging out with friends 15 hours per week, having 5 hours for errands. I think if you kind of count it up, the person has like 52 hours remaining in a week, which is 2 full days. 2 full days and like for like a couple of hours of free time every single week. And that's with 50 hours a week of work and hanging out with friends for 15 hours a week. No one hangs out with friends with 15 hours a week anymore. And okay, 2 full days of free time every single week. Like, how do you not have time? You have a whole entire 48 hours of free time, and it only takes about in total 10 hours a week to really optimize your like mental, physical, spiritual health. 10 hours a week max. Maybe like you could probably get away with it for 7 hours a week, and still be like very amazing. And it's like, wait, you have 2 full days of free time per week, but it only takes 7 hours a week to look your best, feel your best, and be present to those loved ones around you, etc. And all of a sudden, you don't have time for that. Robert Kawasaki said it perfectly. I'm getting this line from him. He mentioned people make excuses to avoid responsibility because
It's true.
easy it's an easy short-term escape, but inevitably what keeps people stuck in cycles of obesity, misery, medical drug addiction, and disease. Because when you make that excuse like, oh, I don't have time, it shuts your brain down from creating a solution instantly, which may be a little bit tough in certain life circumstances, to actually find a solution to a tough problem.
And
But
Eugene, I still take like 3 baths every week because I
oh
think,
yeah,
something that
I do it every
I got
day.
addicted to the baths. They're really
Yeah,
good. They're really calming.
yeah.
So, like I went from thinking I didn't have enough time to, oh my gosh, I have so much time. I just need to be conscious where I'm going to put my time.
Yeah, and I mean, going back to the Robert Kawasaki thing, because this kind of really hit the note on my head when I heard him say it for the first time. He's like, "Yeah, people use it as an escape. They create excuses. I don't have the money. I don't have the time." Robert Kawasaki is kind of like a lot meaner than I am. He's like, "It's because you're a loser. That's why." I wouldn't say a loser, but maybe misguided on how to allocate those resources a little bit better. And yeah, by creating that excuse, oh, I don't have the time. I don't have the money. It shuts your brain down from creating a solution, which is inevitably what the person wants. And sometimes they're not going to get it on their own. So they just need to hire a mentor or like read a bunch of books on the subject and eventually get it themselves by becoming their own mechanic. Although it's more time intensive to go that way. But instead, people are like, oh, I don't want to deal with the stress of coming up with a solution. So I'm just going to create a convenient excuse And that may sound like reasonable in the moment, and it does provide some short-term relief, but again, at the expense of just having compounding interest on misery in the person's life by keeping them stuck and not creating a solution for their problem in that specific area. Um, uh, yeah, I forgot. You kind of mentioned some other thing really quick. What was it that you said? But it's so important. When I was kind of
Um,
talking to you. Uh, uh,
I mentioned the time and what else? No, I don't remember.
oh, yeah, how you had so much time available.
Yeah.
So for doing this with clients for so many years already, I found the average client, at least that comes to me, spends about 15 hours a week on social media. I only kind of laughed here because I had this one funny conversation with this one psychologist client I had a long while back, and once we kind of went through, on your phone, you can check where all your hours are going. And he's like, it was like 22 hours a week. He's like on social media. He's like, holy shit, man. And he was like, used to be in like MMA fights. He's like, I'm spending 22 hours a week watching people get punched in the face. It was just, it was just funny, because I'm like, ah, shit, when you break it down that way, I'm like, man, that's a lot of punching in the
It's a lot of
face.
time.
Yeah.
And it's
22 hours a week,
things
that's like a
like,
part-time job, man.
and it's things that I myself, right? Like maybe I was aware, but I wasn't that aware. I already have an IT job, so I spend a lot of time in front of the screen. And then, like you said, I would go watch YouTube videos or spend more time in front of the screen, right? When you become more self-aware, you're like, no, I already spend time this. I'm gonna shut down my brain a little bit. That's where the baths are really good.
Yeah.
Just put some music in the background and 45 minutes where you just relax and breathe and all this stress goes away. Which then I never feel like stressed or before I would always reach out for a snack, right? Nuts. Oh, nuts are healthy after your programs. Like, yeah, they're very dense foods and they don't fill you up very much. Not a good snack by any stretch. So like again, all these techniques to help you like de-stress, right? Eating doesn't mean you're gonna be de-stressed, right? It's a side effect of being stressed and you're just feeding into the whole
Hmm.
cycle, right? So in my case, I think, taking the time to go to bed at the right time. So, right now I go to bed at 8:30 because by 9 o'clock I want to be asleep, right? Shut down the screens. Days that I'm stressed, especially, I'll take the bath. It's like, no, 45 minutes, me time. I'm going to relax. Before, I thought I didn't even have time to do anything, right? Yeah, when you're watching too many YouTube videos, you don't
Yeah,
have the
22, of
time.
course, 22 hours a week on freaking social media. Of course, you're not going to have any time. And I'll challenge people, like whoever listened to this, just check your phone right now and see how much time you're spending on social media. And it's way more than you think. Every single client I did this exercise with is always shocked. They're like, man, I didn't know I was spending like this much time on social media. And it takes 2 seconds. Just check, keep yourself honest, and you will see it's like exponentially way more than you ever thought you were doing. And just my argument for you, it's like, what would be better if you allocated that time towards your like spiritual, emotional, and physical health, or watching some person with a tremendous amount of plastic
Getting punched.
surgery? Yeah, a tremendous amount of plastic surgery that's all drugged out themselves on social media, for another few hours, etc. That's up to you to decide. And yeah, you touched on stress eating. And yeah, I found with stress eating, it's like, I do a lot of work with clients on identifying their micro stressors, et cetera, et cetera. And then once you get rid of those, the stress eating just in and of itself kind of just disappears on its own. And once you kind of educate a person more on just how to have a little bit more self-respect for themselves and identify when their total stress burden is just too high and stuff of that sort. So,
And I think, Eugenia, I'm lucky, right? That, we started the program when we did because last year we went through selling the house, well, getting the house fixed up. We sold the house, we moved, we had to find a new place to rent, right? I don't think there's it's a very stressful time, right? And we were able to achieve the goals. And, I did conquer Kilimanjaro through that year, right? That normally would be a very stressful year that I could find all the excuses to eat out all the time because we're busy, because we're like
mhm.
this. But it helped us a lot because we put together a schedule too. Like, hey, if we do a little bit every day, consistent, right? We'll get the house in the market, we'll get everything ready, we'll sell. Here's the right time to do all this. So, by proxy, going to the healthy journey, we're always more than a healthy journey, right? Life journey with you helped us, successfully achieve our goals to be here, right, in Washington a year after we decided to do it. So you'll find the time, definitely. We have the time, right? It's just prioritizing that time and, putting the time in the right bucket, as I like to call it.
Oh, so you ended up moving to Washington for some reason? I thought it was Portland or something.
We are just north of Portland in Vancouver, just across the river. It's
Okay,
like
got it.
10 minutes from Portland.
Okay, got it. So that's in Washington technically, right?
Yeah, so
Okay.
I'm in Washington now. Yes.
Okay, got it. Okay, got it. Okay, cool. Um, yeah, I kind of wanted to say something again, but I try to pay attention to what the guest is talking about, and then forget like some things I want to mention and stuff of that sort. But before starting the program, were there any points of hesitation that you had in terms of maybe not wanting to start?
Well, I think for me, right, about 3, 4 years ago, I kind of, saw on Instagram a professional that, kind of at that time I thought the services were very similar to the ones that you offer, but it was a very bad experience, right? It's one of those that, hey, let's work with you. Let's do an assessment. Before I knew, I was on a phone call, and this person said, if you hang up, you don't get this price. You have to commit right now. So I had a really bad experience, right? I think there's a lot of professionals like that out there. And I don't know if you remember, right? Because it's been more than a year now. My first conversations with you, I was very, like skeptical, right? Like, hey, I don't want to be forced into anything, right? There's that initial cost, but again, I'm a very logical person. So if I'm saying this, take my word for it, right? The cost of going to those medications and having a very unhealthy lifestyle, your program, the cost is minimum compared to, what could potentially happen with you. So I think my main hesitation was that, one, there are too many professionals, health professionals out there. I believe sometimes people can have bad experiences if
Hmm.
they try, someone else. There's also, they might know someone that had the bad experience, right? So I had that, skepticism with me of, oh, is this going to be another one of those that I'm going to get a phone call, and if I don't sign up right now, the price is going to go up, right? What the heck is this?
Hmm.
So that was, one of those. And two, right, I think, it's a little bit of, do I really want to commit to this, right? That you doubt yourself, because sometimes when you get to that point, you forget that like you're amazing and you can do so many different things, right? Like you can climb Kilimanjaro, move across the country, right? You start doubting yourself. So you put the little voice in your head that holds you back.
Yeah, I did I think a live on how to find a good healthcare professional last week on checklist, so people can check that out for more details. But I think like the best thing, at least that I look for, is how many like actual successful clients that person has, versus above all else, like how successful they are or what degrees they have, et cetera, et cetera. Um, because a lot of times it's like you go to a doctor's office, it's like, how come they don't have all their successful clients pictured anywhere? You don't see any successful clients, because usually their before would be like an obese person without medication, and their after would be an obese person with medication. That's their
And
before
side
after.
effect.
Yeah, that's their before and after progression usually. And with the social media personalities, you're right. You got to be careful. A lot of them are all drugged out themselves and have unsustainable lifestyles, and typically, like, if they have just like pictures of themselves succeeding and claiming they're like, oh, I've coached thousands of people worldwide, but they don't have like a single testimonial like anywhere on their website, or maybe like two, which they may have stolen like from someone else's page, then that's a super red flag. It's like, okay, you've trained thousands of people and supposedly you're so good. Like, where are all your successful clients? Just use common sense here. Where are all your successful clients?
I felt really good after, you sent me the link to your page, right? And I went through your page and I read what the program was about and, the success stories. And I was like, wow, this is already sounding a lot different from my previous experience.
Yeah.
And
Well,
I think, that first call with you is the best one. No, well,
oh,
no, there's
all
many
right.
amazing calls, but that first one, right? Because you really focus on, the goals, the assessment. I never felt pressure to sign up with you, right? And I remember up to today, again, more than a year ago, I said, hey, really like the conversation, but there's some financials involved here, right? And I'm
Hmm.
married. Let me discuss that, but I'll get back to you. And not for a second you ever pressure me to do anything. So I think that is like, oh, again, I always recommend you to everyone that asks me, hey, how did you get back in shape, right? How did you get to this point? I was like, need to go talk to Eugene because it was really great.
Yeah, there's no point of like pressuring people in it anyways, because inevitably this needs to be a kind of like the pain of staying the same has to be way greater than the pain of changing. You know what I mean? And until a person reaches that point in their life, it's like change is probably not going to happen, and stuff of that sort. So I find it's like, oh, you can't pressure people into wanting to change. You could just suggest like, hey, being this overweight and on 30 medical drugs or 3 medical drugs or 2 is totally not normal because that has been normalized in American culture. Unfortunately, it's totally not normal. It's not good health care. And you have to decide that that's not okay for you. You know what I mean? I can't decide for you. And then once you decide that, you may not know how to get out of that. And then that's when a good coach comes in helpful, to show you like, hey, here's a streamlined process of what to do. And typically, again, when you're hiring a coach, just make sure that they have like a gargantuous amount of great testimonials of people that were in your situation and got out of that situation. And they have a consistent track record of showing that they're able to replicate these results not only on themselves, but on various clients with various educational backgrounds, ethnic backgrounds, environmental backgrounds, et cetera, et cetera. That's really the most important. And then kind of degrees and if they are an author or whatever, if they're in good shape, that stuff is kind of like supplementary. But really, it's like, can you do the work? Like, can you do quality work? I want to see the work. You know what I mean? And stuff of that sort. But yeah,
What I always say about your program is there's tough love, because I think you keep it real, right, Eugene? Like, hey, here are the things that I expect. It's the commitment, right? Here's the things they expect you to do, and if you do them, it's going to work. There's no sugarcoating, right? It's a transformation. I know people use that word all the time, but it's really like the mental transformation. The different mindset of going in. Hey, I am doing this to myself, right? Like I need to change. I need to do better, and I think that's so important.
yeah. I find also, just as a side note, engineers are always the easiest to train because they're very systems
You
driven,
mentioned that.
Yeah, they're always systems driven. So if you give them systems, they'll just know like how to do it, like plug in because they've been doing that for their career, like for freaking forever already. Yeah, and they're like, I just need these systems. I'm like, okay, here, just do this. And then you just follow like ABC every week and then can get a desired outcome, et cetera, et cetera.
And
Um,
something that I think is also important to mention, right? Eugene? Awesome, right? A successful story, but you and I know at some point I hurt myself, right? There was some exercise, the journey is never a straight line, right? But if you follow everything, you're gonna get there. That's the
mhm.
important piece. And you get some bumps in the road, but that consistency is what brings you there, right?
Yeah, exactly. Like no journey is going to be a linear pattern in like anything you take. So that's where it comes back to just moreover being very systems or procedural driven versus relying on the content of the mind, which is always changing its mind. So you're never going to be, you can't rely upon it or you're never going to be consistent. But then the question is, a lot of people are like, oh, what do I rely on if it's not my mind? That's all I know. That's an interesting topic we can cover like on another show.
Another
Which
thing
I
that
actually,
I took, from your program is as you start, doing we'll call the right things, right? Some of your friends might start, oh, I know I couldn't eat this every day, or oh gosh, I couldn't exercise. I myself distance myself, quite a bit from those, types of people because I want people to support me, right? I'm doing this for myself, and if you're really my friend and you care about me, you should support me. So that was also, something that I found, and we'll just say that I reduced some of my circle of friends.
Yeah, which is super important. That's another part of the journey. Obviously, if you don't want to be obese and full of health problems, and all your friends are obese and full of health problems, you're just going to be like the average of the five people you hang out with most. So whether you like it or not, it's going to have a negative impact in relation to that goal on your outcome, you know? And of course, with weight loss challenges, like a lot of people don't understand that any fat loss program isn't sustainable, you know? So the whole point of a fat loss program is just to get rid of the excess amount of body weight, but then immediately transition a person into like a lifestyle program and maybe some other side goal they may have for themselves. Um, but during that process, it's like one of the parts of the journey is to change your environment around. It could mean changing your work, possibly, or it could also probably mean changing your friends around as well. Um, because again, if you just keep hanging out with obese people, you're going to be, even if you're not as overweight as them, you will be still overweight and full of health problems, because the central nervous system tends to, its only purpose is to kind of like survive in the external environment. So it'll tend to mirror what's around it, you know? And if, kind of as the saying goes, um, in society, it's like be like everyone else, but better. But if everyone else is mentally and physically sick and all medically drugged out, like what's the point? You know what I mean? It's almost an insult to your IQ if you're trying to be like everyone else then at that point, you know? So,
The good news is, now that I hike a lot more, right? I made a lot more, not a lot more, but like different types of friends that align a lot better with my values. That's another thing you touch a lot on the program, right? What are your core values?
mhm.
So now I'm living like my core values, and I have friends and family that support that, which is good.
Well, what are some of your core values, if you don't mind sharing them?
Yeah. So one of my core values is, I like to spend time outside in nature. So I always go for hikes after work. I love the sun. So something I learned if you right, I try to get my 10 minutes of sun weekly, something that I didn't do before. I want to live, a healthy life, drug free. My father is, in Brazil still, and he's 81, and he doesn't take any medication, right? But he lives in a farm. When I get to that age, and I hope I get to that age, one of my core values is be like drug free like him. Again, my big wake up call was when my primary doctor tried to put me in three drugs when I'm half of the age of my father.
Hmm.
That for me was like, that was the moment, right?
You're living the American dream, Igor. You know?
So those are some of my core values.
Yeah. Okay. Um, Well, Igor, it was great to catch up. Do you have like any other topics you would like to touch on? I'm
No,
happy to kind of expand on
I think we
anything.
covered a lot.
Yeah, we touched on some important stuff. And again, a lot of people are going to be like, oh, I knew a lot of this information. It's easy to understand. Again, the challenge isn't at the intellectual level. The challenge is at the application level. Uh, I don't know where this saying goes, but like knowledge isn't power. You're not trying to be like a professor here. Applied knowledge is where the results and the power come from. And moreover, applied like consistently, week after week after week, et cetera, et cetera. That's where it really happens. And I feel that's where people make the mistake. They're like, I get it. And I'm like, I know you get it, but are you doing it?
You
You
have to
know?
do
And
it.
I would say 90, because 90% of Americans right now are metabolically sick, I'd say 90% of people, hands down, are not doing it at all, even remotely closely. And it's those same 90% of people that look you dead in the eye and they're like, I eat healthy. I'm healthy. I'm no, dude, you're confused. Not healthy at all. Yeah. But Igor, thanks. It's great to see you again.
No, it was great
Good to see.
to catch up with you, Eugene. Thanks for the opportunity.
Yeah, good to stay in touch. Have you been playing any games?
Oh gosh, a little bit of Path of Exile, but been kind of really busy planning some, hikes and things for the summer. You know me, I'm a planner. Yeah, just Path of Exile too, a little bit here and there.
Yeah, I was thinking this year would be finally the year I go live with deer herders in
I saw your
Norway or
post.
Finland. Yeah. So I'm thinking definitely gonna, I keep putting it off, next year, next year, next year, but I think I'm definitely gonna try to do it this year around uh like November, December or something of that sort. Just for like 2 or 3 weeks, nothing super crazy.
Yeah, in July, we're going to Azores and Madeira Island
Mm,
because there's some lots of good hiking there that I want to, you know, go see. So that will be fun. Something I always say, right, Eugene, there's a huge world out there, right? Like, take the time, travel, get to know different cultures. It just enriches your soul.
yeah. Well, okay. Everyone, have a good weekend. Igor, it's good to see you again. And yeah, let's just stay in touch. I know you're on the lifestyle program at this point. So, of course, if you have any questions, just reach out. Okay.
Thank you,
All right,
everyone.
guys. Good to see everyone. Take care.
Thanks for tuning into the podcast. If you've ever had trouble losing weight, or you've lost weight, but still didn't have the ideal body or health you're aiming for, please feel free to reach out anytime and book an assessment. Eugene will work with you to cover your goals in detail, see what's holding you back, and go from there. In the meantime, feel free to check out the countless testimonials on Eugene's website in the link below. In the testimonial section, you'll notice everyone has various backgrounds, are of all different ages, and all have had different challenges in their life, but they all have one thing in common: they were all able to find their health and achieve their ideal body. You're also welcome to add yourself to the Facebook group in the link below. There you'll have access to the live videos that Eugene does weekly on Sundays and other helpful content. Thank you again for tuning in.